Okay, so today I'm excited to welcome Holly Paige, co-founder and chief storyteller of Wave One Films. They're a Portland-based studio that she launched in 2001 with husband Wayne Page after careers in broadcast journalism. Their boutique agency specializes in storytelling videos that want to engage with their customers, their clients, and those around. Holly, welcome to the show today.
Well, thanks, Chris. This is a real pleasure, and I should actually just hire you to be my front person when I come in and meet with clients. It's great.
Yeah, right. So hey, just watch this. I'll do the
Exactly.
introduction. Jumping straight into things. I know when we connected previously, you kind of told me a little bit about the backstory and whatnot, but how do you go from broadcast journalism to launching a creative?
Yeah, well, so my husband Wayne and I met in Salt Lake City, and we were in a TV newsroom. I was in front of the camera as a reporter, and Wayne was a photographer and editor. And we would go out on stories together. We really liked the way we worked, and we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could build a business around telling stories about ordinary people doing cool things? Because that's what we did in Salt Lake. So we got married in 1991 and moved out to Portland. We didn't really do the business right away. We started a first business that was more focused on editing and 2D animation. But around 2001, we looked at each other and said, gosh, we have a video camera. We haven't used it. Let's dust it off. This is what we really want to do. We wanted to tell stories about people, businesses, or nonprofits doing, cool things and what's stopping us. So that's how we launched it. It was just something that we had talked about for a long time and things got in the way. And then finally we said, gosh, you know what? We got to do it or we're never going to do it. So that's what we did.
Got it. That makes sense. And you mentioned nonprofits. Is that kind of one of the sectors that you really like to work with and focus on?
Yeah, well, we started with nonprofits because we knew that a nonprofit and their ability to raise money hinges on telling a good story. And that was just seemed a natural fit for us. And then we did that for several years. We still do that. We still work with nonprofits, but then we moved into for-profit world into B2B, again, working with people in companies that have their in-house marketing departments, but don't necessarily have in-house video creative. And so we get hired to come in and help them bring their visions to life.
Got it. So you're working in tandem with marketing teams then to create the content that they want.
Right. That's exactly it. Yeah. They usually have the idea. What we do is come in and really focus on really getting clear about, okay, this is what you think you want to tell. This is the story. Great. Let's find what's the heart of the story you want to tell. What does it all mean in this, in the big scheme of things? And then we figure out, great, we once we figure out that essence of the story, and then we can figure out, oh, okay, who are our storytellers on the business side or for customer testimonials, and then we just handle all the production. So it's really three things. It's that story consulting and coaching, and then the story production and development, and then video production and editing.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Very interesting. Last time when we connected, Holly, you mentioned this concept that was really new to me, but really fascinating. This concept of a practice versus like building a practice versus scaling a business. Can you explain that for our listeners and other agency owners out there that are maybe super focused on trying to build this huge agency?
Absolutely. Well, when we started, we decided, oh, we really want to scale this quickly. We want to make a lot of money. After all, that's why you start a business, right? And our ideas sounded great, but then we realized, well, gosh, if we scale this business, we're going to have to hire a lot of people. We're going to have payroll and go after bigger budgets, and we're going to become managers and not storytellers. And we really wanted to do the work. And so we made a decision early on that we were going to grow a practice. And that was a conscious decision that we made. We still get to do the work. We run just about all the phases of the business. I mean, sometime occasionally we'll hire, if we need a second camera crew, we'll hire, or maybe music, when somebody wants original score, we'll hire that out, or 3D animation. By and large, it's the two of us. And so we really made that decision right at the beginning when we said, we're going to kill ourselves. If we think we can go after really big projects and do all that work, it's just not going to happen. So that was the decision we made.
And it served you well. How many years later? Over 20.
Yeah. Let's see, 24. It'll be 24
24,
years,
almost
so
25.
yeah. It's, sometimes
Wow.
it seems like forever, and then sometimes it seems like, "Oh my gosh, it just was like yesterday."
I'm sure. I mean, in this day and age with creative agencies, social media, and like this content space that's kind of popping up with AI as well, I guess what would you say was the one or maybe one of the main levers that has allowed you all to stay competitive and yet continue to serve your clients that you're working with?
When we started out, we figured that people wouldn't really get the idea of storytelling but they really understood video production. And so what we did was that's how we got in the door early on. We said we offer video production, filming, editing, story development, interviewing, script writing, etc. Once we got in the door with clients, then we said, all right, then we're going to show you the way we tell stories, how we do it. And so that's how we first started. And we've just we've kept it small on purpose, primarily because, we do the work. Now, that doesn't mean small budgets necessarily. It just we're pretty able to pick and choose and really go after projects that work within our bandwidth and what the client wants. And it's interesting you mentioned AI. I mean, I think AI is great. I use it in the pre-production phase because our stories are primarily put together through interviews. I don't necessarily write a script, but what I use AI for is in that creative briefs or outlines of things of that nature and that real beginning end. And it does save a lot of time. So I'm always tinkering with ways, how can I use this? What can I do with AI to make the workload a little easier and more efficient? So I think it is a great tool.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And so you mentioned interview. So I'm curious, how do you go from an interview to a story? Like, what is that transitionary period? I'm assuming it takes a lot of creative thought and strategy on your side.
Well, what we do is, I mean, we always say our stories are unscripted, and that's true, but there's a heck of a lot of planning that's involved. So as we go through our discovery session with clients, we really get a sense of who are their storytellers, what piece of the story are they going to tell, right? Because let's say 5 interviews, they're not all gonna talk about the same thing. So we've said, "Right, look, one person's gonna talk about this, one person's gonna talk about that." And so we know going into filming that we've got an idea of how the story, at least, the bones of the story. And then when we sit down and interview people, it's for a specific purpose, a specific topic. And then once we get all finished with that, we'll go back, transcribe the interviews, and I sit with it for a little bit because it doesn't. I wish it happened really quickly, and sometimes it does, and sometimes you just have to sit with it for a while. So it's a process of reading transcripts, listening to interviews, because sometimes what reads great in a transcript when a person says it doesn't sound so great, and so you always have to balance that out. But eventually, the story, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, except you can put it together a million different ways. So the challenge is to say, all right, this is where I think we're going with. This is what I think the client wanted based on what they told us. And we put it together and we deliver it to the client, and we spend a lot of time with them saying, "Is this what you wanted? Does this work? What did we miss? What can we add?" So it's very collaborative, and then it works. But there's a lot of planning that goes into it. So it's not just showing up with a camera and saying, "Okay, we're here." We've done the research. Sometimes we'll pre-interview people. We'll call them on the phone and talk to them a little bit. If we're lucky, we get to meet them beforehand, but we have a really good idea of what we're looking for. And also when we're filming, the client's always with us, which we think is great because they can troubleshoot in real time. And we want them there on interviews because I may have a list of questions or topics and I'll run through them and then the client will say, "Oh yeah, but let's talk about this. And did you think about that?" And that's always really helpful because that just lends to that familiarity with the person we're interviewing, having somebody from their team there. So we love it when clients come with us. It makes our jobs a lot.
That makes sense. I'm curious if you're interviewing your clients or your clients' team members or family members or maybe all the above. What does that piece look like?
Well, it's a combination. So, I mean, if we're going to, let's see, we're going to interview team members for let's say, a marketing film, and then they want us to interview some of their clients in the form of testimonials, right? So So it would be interviewing people in the company and then the testimonials outside the company. It really depends on what a client wants. Sometimes it all works really well, and sometimes we have to make trade-offs, and sometimes you can have too many storytellers for your story. I know that sounds strange, but if you're looking at, say, let's just say a 3 to 5 minute piece, you probably I would say six different interviews is kind of pushing it. So I'd say between 5 and 6, and sometimes people say, "Oh, we wanna interview 10," and sometimes we can make it work and sometimes we can't, but we do our best. So it's
Got it.
really a mix of what the client wants.
Got it. And I'm sure that there isn't like a one size fits all, but I guess at the end, what does the end product look like? Is it a brand story or does it totally depend on what the client asks you for in the beginning?
It really depends. So we do video case studies of projects. We've done fundraising videos that are shown at fundraising galas. We've done marketing pieces. For social media, we've done oh my gosh, we've done building, campaigns. I think there's probably not probably we've probably done just about everything, and it's primarily based on what kind of campaign a client is trying to launch.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I figured it'd be a little bit of all the above.
Yeah, look, I wish it were one size fits all. I think that would make things really a little more compact, but I think that's just part of the fun of it. You know, I love meeting new people. I love finding out what makes them tick, and I love solving their problems. And the way that I solve their problems is helping them use video to tell their story to reach the customers and funders and people that they want to meet.
Having personally having a sales background, I know that there's nothing that converts better or higher than stories. And the more stories or the more impactful stories that you have, I know it creates really powerful brand assets that makes
Uh-huh.
everything a little bit easier on the client acquisition side.
Oh, yeah. Stories about sales stories are great. We've done stories about real estate agents, we've done stories about sales trainers. I mean, again, it's really that human story, and that transcends any client, any business. But yeah, we did some real estate stories several years ago, and our client really loved it because he said, "This is a great tool for me because someone can watch this video and say, 'Ooh, I really like how this person works. I would like to work with them.'" And then by the same token, somebody would say, I don't think he's the right person for me. And that's totally fine because that self selection process saved our client a lot of time. So when somebody watched his video, they really got a sense of how he worked, who he was, and could they see themselves working with him. So I think they're great. I mean, I think more sales stories. Yeah, I think they're just really fun. They're fun to do. Everybody has a story, and sales is tough, right? Sales is a hard it's a hard profession, and so anytime you can make it easy on a salesperson or a sales team, yeah, why wouldn't you do that?
Very cool. Yeah, I can appreciate that. Speaking of sales, I think when we connected previously, you mentioned that you have clients that have been with you for worked with you over 10 or 15 years, correct?
Right.
And that you've built relationships where your business has grown through referrals and networking and people that know and have seen your work before. Is that
Yeah, that's true, and sometimes we'll work with clients, and then they'll go away for several years, and then they'll come back. And there's really no way to keep marketing for that. It's always nice and very flattering when somebody hangs on to your information and says, "Hey, we worked together back in whatever 10 years ago or whatever, and we want to finish this project and we thought of you." And I thought, "That's really great." So there's really no way to market to that. But going to trade shows, going to conferences, just being a resource, being trying to be helpful and useful to folks who have great ideas, have great products, want to get the word out, and just need a little help in making that
very cool? Very cool. And so as you're growing or maintaining a practice that doesn't have the intention of scaling to like this, massive agency level thing, but it's a really hands-on boutique white glove practice, what are the next steps for you? What else are you looking at? Because obviously your time is a constraint inside of the practice. And so I think you mentioned that you're also doing coaching and consulting. Is that what the next step looks like for you all?
I think so. I mean, I think that is a big part of what we do. And many times people will benefit from that coaching and consulting because it's part of a video project. But I've always believed that if you have a real good handle on what the essence of your story is, I mean, even before you do any video or social media or any kind of marketing, if you have that solid idea of what my story is about, and also learn how to think about doing it. I think that's the thing. It's one thing to come in and say, "Oh, I've got, you know, I think that the heart of your story is this," but really to teach people this is how you can kind of figure it out for yourself. I think that's also really interesting too, and one of the things that I'm exploring, in addition to still doing filming.
Got it. Not to put you on the spot here, Holly, but if, for our listeners, other business owners that are listening, if they wanted like a crash course on telling their story, what would it be?
A crash course, let's see. You are putting me on the spot. Let me see if I can do this. I when we sit down with clients, we suggest that they get beyond their products, right? What they're whatever they're making, and really focus on the reasons why they're doing it. I mean, founder stories are great because every founder had a vision or has a vision. And what was that initial vision? And often it's not, oh, I want to make the best hammer, for example. Or it's not that. It's I had an idea that I saw something that could have been done better. And I wanted to do that. And I wanted to serve my community. And so if you're thinking of how to tell your story, really think back to, well, what was it that really made me want to do this? And I always tell people our product, the final product is a video, but all the work that goes into it before that time is really, I think, what our process is about. I mean, it's like an iceberg, right? So if you think that if the video is like the tip of your iceberg, that's great. But if you look underneath the surface, I mean, there's all this other work, planning and consulting and thinking and counseling and filming and all of that. And so I would advise people to really think about why they're doing this, what gets them up in the morning, and even during the hard times. Why did they think they had it in them to build a better mousetrap? And how are they doing that? One of the things that I'm seeing, and I think that might be kind of much easier, is at least in Portland, the Portland market, we're seeing a lot of what I call really niche marketing, right? So in a marketing, maybe a traditional advertising or marketing or public relations agency, sometimes some of the agencies say, "Well, we do it all," and you've got a whole laundry list of things that they do, and I always look at those and say, "Well, great, but what are the 3 things you do best?" I mean, the 2 or 3 things you do better than anybody. And so what I'm seeing here in Portland is a lot of niche agencies that say we do this really well. We do these 2 things or 3 things really well. This is what we're known for. And I think for businesses that are hiring agencies like that, I think that could really be offer a competitive edge because you're not offering 30 things. You're offering 3, but those 3 will solve somebody's problem in a way that maybe a more generalist approach couldn't.
That makes sense. And I think that's something that a lot of agency owners struggle with is really niching down to a specific audience and a specific service for that audience. And so I think that's really good words of wisdom for other agency owners that are listening that maybe don't have the creative skill sets that you guys have. How would you recommend them going about establishing partnerships and kind of opening those doors? Because I think that sometimes there's a competitive nature where it's like,
Mhm.
I don't want to reach out to them. They might be my competition.
Well, hey, yeah, that is a really good point. I would say that let's say if you're an agency, if you're looking for, let's say, video expertise, I can speak to that. I would recommend you take a look at their website. You really take a look at their style. I mean, every video professional has a certain style, and that's what they're known for. And so I would spend a lot of time looking at those styles. And I would also obviously ask people, have you worked with this company? If they did you have a great experience? If you didn't, why didn't you? And I think that, a lot of it is people. You want to get along with the people that you're working with. I mean, I always tell people we're really easy to work with. We're very flexible. We're very collaborative. But you might not like our storytelling style, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. You should always try to figure out and say, Do I like these people? Do I think I can do business with them? Can I build a relationship with them? Are they gonna keep me safe? Are they gonna look out for my best interests? Are they going to, you know, treat my money as if it were their own? I mean, I think that's all of those. It seems so simple, but I think that's really what it is for me. Who do you like to work with? Do you trust them? Do you think they're going to care about you and care about the product? And do they want to help you solve your problem?
I think simple, but like powerful and really foundational because with this day and age, with everything that's going on in the world and tech and things that are moving so quickly, I think the human element, the human emotion can sometimes get lost. And so I'm glad that you pointed that out.
Yeah, it is really easy if you're online, I mean, we consume so much media on our phones, oh my gosh, I mean, it's dizzying. But I think at the heart of it, people wanna connect with other people. You wanna make a connection. You want to be kind to people. I think that's sometimes harder in where we are today, and I think that if you can treat people like human beings and to be kind to them and really look out for their best interests, even if they decide not to work with you. I mean, we've had that happen. We had a client once, we really wanted to work with them, and they went with somebody else, and we said, "Fine, we're sorry, we're sad, but great." And so we saw them a couple of years later, and I just asked him, I said, "How did that project go that you worked on with a competitor?" And he said, "Oh my gosh," he said, "Ugh." He says, "It was not a great experience." He said, "I admit that he said, I really liked the way, their trucks looked, parked in a parking lot." And he says, "But they were really terrible. They're terrible to work with." And that made me feel sad. I mean, like I said, we're not for everybody, but I guess it's to figure out, what's important to you, and how you can work. And there is a competitive factor. We don't do a lot of work with public relations agencies, for example. And a lot of it has to do with budget, right? If you're a PR professional and this is your client and you've budgeted a certain amount, and, you can't go back to your client and say, "Oh, well, this video team wants X and it's more than what we budgeted for." I get that. I understand that. So I think it's really figuring out, can you work collaboratively with these people, with these teams? Will you have fun with them? Will they make you look good? I mean, it's just all these real bedrock things that you ought to really just pay attention to and really think them through, and don't think that everybody's gonna operate the same way.
Great words of wisdom there. No, I think sometimes simple fundamental things that make the biggest difference. If you guys have been able to do those really well for almost 25 years and you've stayed in business and you've stayed successful, I think it speaks a lot towards that.
Yeah, I mean, I thank you, and I hope so. I mean, I think, running a business it sounds great until you're like, at 3 in the morning trying to figure out, "How am I gonna pay this bill? How am I gonna keep the lights on?" Right? My husband is probably more comfortable with risk than I am, and so that's been a real learning curve for me over the years. But, it can be tough, and any business owner will tell you that it's great, and it's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it can also be really rewarding too. I think that's just a great way to look at it.
I love that perspective. Getting ready to wrap up here, Holly, what are some things that you and your husband are looking forward to in the next short period of time?
Well, like I said, I think the idea of doing some more storytelling consulting is really appealing to me. Maybe teaching workshops, again, teaching people how to do it, because once you learn the basics, then you've got a real skill that you can use to make your business better and make your clients' businesses better. I think we just always love telling great stories, and I think the challenge is finding maybe markets that aren't that wouldn't normally use video. I guess I call them, real, necessary markets that don't that aren't really glitzy, but without them, your communities wouldn't run well, your streets wouldn't run well. So I mean, it's those more traditional businesses that you might not think want marketing, but really do.
Got it. So if someone listening was interested in, you know, you supporting them, telling their story or anything that we spoke about here today, where can people learn more about you, learn more about the services that you provide?
Sure. Well, they can contact me on LinkedIn at Holly M. Page, Paige, or they can visit our website, wave1films.com, which is all spelled out, or they can just email me, Holly at wave1films.com. I am happy
Awesome.
to
And
talk to anybody.
okay, cool. And I'll make sure to include links and some of that
Great.
stuff in the show notes as well. Thanks so much for coming on today, Holly.
Oh, my pleasure. This was really fun. And hopefully it's helpful and useful to agency owners who are just kind of getting their heads around video because it can really be a great tool. And yeah, I highly recommend it.
I think it will be. I think with this day and age where video is so powerful over social media and all these platforms, I think it's almost like you can't ignore it anymore.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it'll be
Yeah.
really impactful. Thanks so much, Holly.
Thank you.